Dr. Amara Ellis clutched her side, the sharp pain slicing through her abdomen as the plane jolted through turbulence. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her breath shallow as she pressed the call button for the third time. The flight attendant, a wiry man with a pinched face, glanced at her from the galley, his eyes narrowing before he turned away, muttering something to his colleague. Amara's fingers tightened around the armrest. She wasn't just any passenger, she was a leading medical researcher, hours away from presenting a breakthrough on pancreatic cancer at an international conference in Geneva. But here, 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, she was just a black woman in economy, ignored and dismissed. "Excuse me," she called, her voice firm despite the pain. The attendant, whose name tag read Greg, finally approached, his tone clipped. "Ma'am, you need to stay seated. We're in turbulence." Amara's eyes flashed. "I'm having severe abdominal pain. I need help now." Greg's lips pursed, skepticism etched into his face. Probably just nerves. "Drink some water." He slid a plastic cup toward her and walked off. Amara's jaw clenched. She knew this pain appendicitis, likely, or worse. She'd seen it in her patients, and she wasn't about to be brushed off. As the plane lurched again, she unbuckled her seatbelt, determined to make someone listen. Unaware that this moment would unravel a chain of events, exposing Greg's biases, her own resilience, and a truth that would turn the tables on everyone aboard. Amara is not just a passenger, but a renowned medical researcher. A fact Greg is oblivious to due to his dismissive attitude and implicit bias. This sets up the central conflict. Urgent medical need is ignored because of racial and class profiling, while her expertise positions her to challenge Greg's assumptions later. The twist hints at her influence, which will shift the power dynamics when her identity and credentials come to light. Forcing Greg to confront his prejudice and the consequences of his actions, Amara staggered to her feet. One hand braced against the seat in front of her as another wave of pain hit. The cabin lights flickered, and passengers glanced her way, some with concern, others with annoyance. She made her way toward the galley, where Greg was stacking trays. "I'm a doctor," she said, her voice steady despite the sweat trickling down her temple. "I need you to page for medical assistance. This could be appendicitis." Greg barely looked up. "We don't have a doctor on board, ma'am. Sit down before you cause a scene." His tone carried an edge, as if she were a child exaggerating a scraped knee. Amara's vision blurred briefly, but she squared her shoulders. "I am a doctor. I know what I'm talking about." Greg's eyes flicked to her worn sneakers, an economy-class boarding pass peeking from her pocket. "Sure you are," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. A nearby passenger, an older white woman, gasped softly, but no one spoke up. Amara's heart pounded, not just from pain, but from the humiliation of being dismissed. She flashed back to her residency, when a senior surgeon had questioned her diagnosis in front of a patient, assuming she was a nurse. She'd proven him wrong then, and she'd do it again now. "Get the captain," she demanded. Greg hesitated, his face reddening, but before he could respond, Amara doubled over, clutching her side, and collapsed against the galley counter. As Amara slumped against the counter, her mind spiraled to a memory from 10 years ago. She was 28, a first-year resident in a Chicago hospital. Standing in a sterile OR, her hands steady as she assisted in a complex pancreatic surgery. The lead surgeon, Dr. Hargrove, had scoffed when she suggested an alternative incision to avoid a nerve cluster. "Stick to the playbook, Ellis," he'd said, his tone implying she was out of her depth. But when the patient's vitals stabilized after her adjustment, Hargrove's silence was her victory. That moment had fueled her rise through sleepless nights, microaggressions, and skepticism from colleagues who couldn't see past her race or gender to her skill. Now, as the plane's hum filled her ears, that same fire surged. She wasn't just fighting pain. She was fighting a system that reduced her to a stereotype. Back in the present, a second flight attendant, a younger woman named Lena, rushed over. "Ma'am, are you okay?" she asked, her voice softer than Greg's. Amara gritted her teeth. "I need oxygen and a first aid kit." "Now," Lena nodded, shooting Greg a wary glance before hurrying off. Greg folded his arms, still unconvinced. "If you're a doctor, why didn't you say so earlier?" Amara's eyes locked on his. "I shouldn't have to." Dr. Amara Ellis doubled over in pain, unbuckled her seatbelt, determined to make someone listen. Unaware that this moment would unravel a chain of events, exposing Greg's biases, her own resilience, and a truth that would turn the tables on everyone aboard, she gripped the armrest, her voice steady despite the sharp ache in her abdomen. "I need medical attention now," she repeated, locking eyes with Greg. The flight attendant, who had dismissed her earlier, his arms crossed, he leaned against the galley counter. "Ma'am, you're not a doctor. Sit down before you disrupt the flight." His words carried a sharp edge, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. A man in a business suit 2 rows ahead snorted, muttering, "Always someone causing trouble." Amara's jaw tightened, but she pressed on. "I'm Dr. Amara Ellis, head of oncology research at Johns Hopkins. I know appendicitis when I feel it. Page for medical assistance now." Greg's expression faltered, his eyes flicking to her. Casual attire-worn sneakers, a simple hoodie, and the economy-class boarding pass protruding from her pocket. "Johns Hopkins?" he scoffed, voice low but audible. "Sure, and I'm the pilot." A few passengers shifted uncomfortably, one whispering to another. Amara straightened, ignoring the pain shooting through her side. "You're ignoring a medical emergency because you've decided I'm not credible. That's your mistake." Her words cut through the cabin's hum, and a woman in a nearby seat gasped softly. Greg's face reddened, but he doubled down. "We're in the air. What do you expect me to do? We don't have a hospital up here." Lena, the younger flight attendant, stepped forward, her voice calmer. "We can page for a doctor on board. It's protocol." She glanced at Greg, who shot her a sharp look but said nothing. Amara nodded, her breath shallow. "Do it, and get me oxygen and the first aid kit." Lena moved quickly, reaching for the intercom, while Greg stood frozen, his skepticism unshaken. The captain's voice soon crackled overhead. "If there are any medical professionals on board, please identify yourself to the crew." Silence followed. No one stood. Amara's hands trembled not from pain but from the weight of being dismissed again. She'd faced this before, colleagues who assumed she was a nurse, patients who questioned her credentials. Each time, she'd proven them wrong, with results, not arguments. "See," Greg said, his tone smug. "No doctors. Just sit tight until we land." Amara removed the oxygen mask Lena had just handed her. "You're not listening. I'm the doctor here, and I'm telling you, this is serious." Her voice carried authority, and the cabin quieted. A passenger, a middle-aged man with a laptop, looked up from his screen. "Wait, Dr. Ellis, from Johns Hopkins. I read your paper on targeted cancer therapies. You're presenting in Geneva, right?" Amara nodded, her strength waning but her focus sharp. The man turned to Greg. "She's not just a doctor, she's a leading researcher. You should listen to her." Greg's posture stiffened, his confidence cracking. "Doesn't change the situation," he muttered, but his voice lacked its earlier bite. Lena, now holding the first aid kit, spoke up. "We can divert the flight for a medical emergency. It's in the manual." Greg's eyes narrowed. "Divert? Over this, we're hours from Geneva." Amara leaned forward, her voice low but firm. "If you don't act, and something happens to me, you'll be explaining why you ignored a medical professional's warning. I'll make sure everyone knows, starting with your airline." The threat hung in the air, and passengers began murmuring. A woman pulled out her phone, subtly recording. Greg's face flushed deeper, but he turned away, muttering to Lena, "Handle it." Then Lena knelt beside Amara, checking her pulse with a small monitor from the kit. "Your heart rate's high," she said quietly. "We'll get you help." Amara nodded, her mind racing. She knew the risks of untreated appendicitis rupture, infection, worse. She also knew Greg's dismissal wasn't just negligence. It was rooted in assumptions about her race and class. She'd seen it too often. The quick judgments, the refusal to listen. But this time, her credentials were her weapon. The laptop passenger spoke again, louder. "You need to take this seriously. I'm emailing my firm's legal team about this." His words stirred the cabin, and more passengers looked up, some nodding in agreement. Greg retreated to the galley, his silence an admission of doubt. Amara leaned back, the oxygen mask pressed to her face, her resolve unshaken. She'd fight this battle one way or another. Dr. Amara Ellis doubled over in pain, unbuckled her seatbelt, determined to make someone listen. unaware that this moment would unravel a chain of events exposing Greg's biases, her own resilience, and a truth that would turn the tables on everyone aboard. Now, 2 days post-surgery in a Newfoundland hospital, Amara sat propped up in her bed, her laptop open to her pancreatic cancer presentation for the Geneva conference. The pain from her appendicitis surgery had subsided, but the sting of Greg's dismissal lingered. She replayed the flight in her mind, his skepticism, his refusal to act, his muttered assumption that she wasn't a doctor. It wasn't just negligence, it was a bias she'd faced too often as a black woman in medicine. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, pausing as Lena, the flight attendant who had helped her, knocked and entered. "I wanted to check on you," Lena said, her voice steady. "Greg's on administrative leave. The airline's investigating." Amara nodded, her expression guarded. "He's been reprimanded before, hasn't he?" Lena hesitated, then confirmed. "Last year, a passenger complained about his attitude toward a family." The airline settled quietly. Amara's jaw tightened. She'd suspected as much from Greg's defensive whispers during the flight. His pattern of dismissal had nearly cost her life. Lena continued, "Your story's everywhere online. The video that passenger posted, it's viral. People are demanding accountability." Amara opened her phone, scrolling through notifications. The clip, posted by the laptop passenger, showed her confrontation with Greg. Her credentials clear in the caption, Dr. Amara Ellis, Johns Hopkins, researcher, ignored by flight crew during medical emergency. Retweets numbered in the thousands, with comments calling out systemic bias in service industries. Amara's inbox overflowed messages of support from strangers, an apology from the airline's PR team, and an invitation to speak at a diversity panel in New York. She set the phone down, her mind drifting to her mother, a nurse who'd endured similar slights in the 1980s. Her mother's advice echoed, "Fight with facts." Amara, not anger. She'd done that on the plane, leveraging her expertise to force action, but the victory felt hollow. Greg's suspension wasn't enough. The system that enabled him remained intact. She typed a response to the airline, demanding a meeting to discuss their medical emergency protocols. "This isn't just about me," she wrote. "It's about every passenger you failed to listen to." The laptop passenger, whose name she learned was David, emailed her directly. "I've contacted a lawyer friend," he wrote. "This could be a class action, if others come forward." Amara considered it. She'd never sought the spotlight, but the viral video had made her a symbol. She searched her name online, finding articles on news sites and posts on X amplifying her story. One headline read, "Renowned doctor nearly dies after flight attendant's bias." Another user posted, "How many others get ignored because they don't look important?" The question hit hard. She'd faced it in hospitals' patients, doubting her, colleagues assuming she was less qualified. Each time, she'd proven them wrong with results. A patented therapy, a published study, a department head position at 38.Lena lingered, offering, "I can testify if you file a complaint." Greg's attitude wasn't new. Amara met her gaze. "I'm filing, but I need more than his suspension. Policies have to change." Lena nodded, handing her a card with the airline's legal contact. Amara tucked it away, her resolve sharpening. She thought of her patients, many marginalized, who relied on her advocacy. This fight was bigger than one flight. She opened her presentation, refining a slide on health disparities, weaving in her experience. "Bias kills," she typed, whether in a hospital or 30,000 feet in the air. By evening, the airline issued a public statement acknowledging an incident and promising a review. Amara scoffed it was too vague, too calculated. She drafted a formal complaint detailing Greg's actions and the delay in care. She cited medical protocol, noting how her expertise had forced the diversion. The online outrage grew, with passengers sharing similar stories of dismissal by airline staff. One woman wrote about being ignored while pregnant. Another described a crew dismissing an elderly man's chest pain. Amara's case had cracked open a broader conversation. As she closed her laptop, preparing for discharge, she knew this was only the beginning. Her voice, amplified by the truth, would push for accountability, not just for her, but for everyone silenced by prejudice. Dr. Amara Ellis doubled over in pain, unbuckled her seatbelt, determined to make someone listen. unaware that this moment would unravel a chain of events exposing Greg's biases, her own resilience, and a truth that would turn the tables on everyone aboard. 2 weeks later, Amara stood at the Geneva conference, delivering her pancreatic cancer research to a packed auditorium. Her presentation earned a standing ovation, but she seized the moment to address her ordeal. "We cannot advance medicine or any field if prejudice silences expertise," she said, her voice clear. "Bias delayed my care on a flight, nearly costing my life." The audience fell silent, then applauded, her words sparking murmurs of agreement. The speech, live-streamed, amplified her story further. The airline had settled privately, offering compensation and a public apology, but Greg faced only a suspension, no formal charges. Amara found this insufficient. She filed a formal complaint demanding revised medical emergency protocols. The viral video from the flight, posted by a passenger, had fueled outrage, prompting others to share stories of mistreatment by airline staff. Posts and news articles debated systemic bias, with one outlet quoting Amara, "Listening saves lives. Assumptions endanger them." Her case had become a catalyst, exposing flaws in how airlines handle crises. Amara met with airline executives, presenting data on delayed medical responses and citing her own expertise. They committed to staff retraining and clearer protocols, though she remained skeptical of their follow-through. She accepted the diversity panel invitation, using it to advocate for accountability across industries. Her mother's words, "Fight with facts," guided her. The online movement grew, with passengers forming a coalition to push for policy reform. Amara's complaint, backed by Lena's testimony and passenger videos, pressured the airline to act. As she prepared for her next flight, Amara reviewed her research, her resolve firm. The settlement funded a scholarship for underrepresented medical students, a step toward change. Her story had exposed a crack in the system, forcing a reckoning. She knew justice was incomplete. Greg's suspension wasn't enough, and systemic bias persisted. But her voice, now amplified, challenged others to confront prejudice and demand fairness, ensuring her fight extended beyond one flight